Typically, what we do is we will register a trust, usually in the Cook Islands, though we have done business in other countries such as Nevis and Belize. And then under that trust, we'll have them open a bank account, most likely here in Switzerland, sometimes in Liechtenstein.
Welcome to Swiss Money Secrets, your go-to podcast for insights on offshore investing and banking from the trusted Swiss perspective. Let's get into it.
We are so excited to have Blake Harris, the #1 asset protection attorney in the U.S., with us today to be talking about offshore structures and asset protection and what it means for Americans. Blake, before I let you introduce yourself, we're going to start off with a news topic that we always do. The big news that happened last month was Moody's downgraded the U.S. They were the final credit rating to downgrade the U.S. Pretty big, shocking, citing the rising debt levels, the lack of the U.S. actually making fiscal change. Jamie, maybe you could give some of your perspective. Blake, absolutely happy to jump in on that as well.
Well, first of all, you seem way too excited about this, Jess.
Well, it is in line with what we do. It's what we've been saying for so long.
It is. I've heard this from Switzerland for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great news. It's the third and final large agency that has downgraded the U.S. still with a stable outlook. I think the U.S. still has a lot going for itself. It's a huge country. It has a solid economy. It has the U.S. as a reserve currency. So there's still things speaking for the U.S., but I think the general direction is fiscal irresponsibility, and it is a consequence of not just the current administration, but many administrations before, of just not taking the ballooning debt level seriously. The interest payments on the debt for the U.S. is currently the single biggest expense that the country has, which is crazy. So yeah, I mean, it's not positive news, but it sort of confirms what we have been telling people for a long time. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of people are interested in internationally diversifying their assets.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's always part of the point of, we're not excited. I want the U.S. to do well. I'm an American. I have family in the U.S. I want the U.S. to do well. But when you have decades-long poor decisions, and it seemed for so long that these credit ratings agencies just blinded themselves to this and wouldn't acknowledge it, for me, it's more of, okay, maybe there can now be some change. So where it's tough news. I mean, the U.S. is still a decent rating. Let's be fair. It's not like they have no rating or that they're saying there's the imminent collapse, but it's just showing, hey, there's signs of this happening.
It seems Doge did not go far enough. There needs to be a few more cuts before the bond rating gets improved.
Yeah, I mean, like most things, there's the whole levers of economic control. And most of the time they're lagging. And so I think that's part of the issue, that, even these ratings are going to be behind, but also all the change that they're trying to instill is going to take some time to hit, if it hits at all. I mean, we can get into all the speculation, but I think we should really transition into what we're here to talk about today. And that's asset protection for Americans. Blake, as the #1 attorney doing this in the U.S. for Americans, maybe you can introduce yourself, just give a little bit of a background about what you do to start the episode off.
Sure. So I am the managing attorney at Blake Harris Law. We are the nation's largest exclusively offshore asset protection law firm. We help clients set up structures where, in the event that they are sued or they go through a divorce, their assets remain protected. Typically, what we do is we will register a trust, usually in the Cook Islands, though we have done business in other countries such as Nevis and Belize. And then under that trust, we'll have them open a bank account, most likely here in Switzerland, sometimes in Liechtenstein, or in some other cases, if we can't get into a Swiss or Liechtenstein bank, we'll look to the Cook Islands or Panama. But the ideal structure is to utilize the best jurisdiction for asset protection, the Cook Islands, and then have that account open a bank account in Switzerland. Clients then have the peace of mind to know their money is protected without losing access to their money, still being able to invest that money however they see fit. And I'd love to have the two of you share a little bit more about the investment options that they get in Switzerland.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. Maybe first you can elaborate a little bit on what makes the Cook Islands the best jurisdiction for asset protection.
So in terms of asset protection trust, there's two schools of thought. There are the domestic trust, which are based in Alaska, Nevada, Wyoming. There's more than a dozen different domestic jurisdictions. And then there are the offshore trusts, which Cook Islands, Nevis, and Belize are the most commonly used ones. And then there's two dozen more other options for setting up an offshore trust. The difference between the offshore trust and the domestic trust is very simple. One of those trusts can be disregarded by U.S. court order. And actually, under Article 4, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, every state has to give full faith and credit to the judgments and court orders of every other state, meaning that if you set up a trust in one state, but another jurisdiction has issued a court order ordering you to pay over some money, that trust could break. And the case law supports this. There have been many times where domestic trusts have failed. So within the offshore arena, the top three jurisdictions, well, let me step back. While there are more than 24 different jurisdictions that you can use to set up an offshore trust, there are really only 3 jurisdictions which have good codified case law supported legislation and law, which jurisdictions also routinely and gladly take Americans. Cook Islands, Nevis, and Belize. You'll hear BVI some, you'll hear Cayman, and you'll hear Bahamas, but those 3 are not particularly protective jurisdictions, though they will welcome Americans. Among the 3 protective ones, Belize, I like their law a lot. However, it does tend to be a fairly unstable place to do business with the banks. The regulators can be a little bit unpredictable. They'll ask for information, demand answers within 48 hours, and then not get back to you for days, weeks, or ever sometimes. So it's not our first choice of place to set up a trust. In an emergency, we would utilize Belize, but it's not our first choice. Next is Nevis. Nevis has a very good law in place. They've been in the industry quite a while. We were just speaking, my team and I were down in Nevis earlier this year. We were speaking with the premier, and he reaffirmed that they are committed to focusing on the asset protection business. There was rumors that they were going to pass some legislation which would water that down. That was put away. However, they don't have quite the history that the Cook Islands does. On top of that, the Cook Islands is one of the safest places in the world to do business. I heard that it came up on a list well above the United States and even above Switzerland in terms of the safety of place to do business. On top of that, its increased distance from the United States makes it an undesirable place for a plaintiff to go and litigate. And then just simply the law. It requires a bond be posted. That bond is not exactly codified, but it usually comes out to $100,000 or more. You have to win your case in the Cook Islands by a standard of beyond a reasonable doubt, a very hard standard to reach, one which in the United States is reserved only for criminal matters. You can't amend a case in the Cook Islands. So if you start a lawsuit in the Cook Islands and then find the reason that you are suing someone is not on point, you can't amend it like you can in the United States. You have to refile the case, which at that point, there's a good chance the statute of limitations is passed. There's a very short statute of limitations. Usually it's 1 to 2 years. The combination of all of these factors has done such a good job at deterring litigation that there's actually very little case law. There is some case law, and it does support that these trusts are nearly unbreakable, but simply the threat, the fear of trying to go after a Cook Islands trust is so hard that most attorneys, most plaintiffs won't want to go after a trust in the Cook Islands. On top of that, contingency fees are not allowed in the United States, which means a plaintiff in the United States who hasn't paid anything realizes, oh, wow, I have to go to the Cook Islands and restart my case, come out of pocket $100,000 or more to try my case there. Plus, U.S. licensed attorneys, unless they're licensed in New Zealand or the Cook Islands, can't practice there. So your U.S. attorney is probably going to be saying, why don't you take the settlement offer because you're not going to win in the Cook Islands, and I'm not going to get paid if you keep going there. Maybe they don't say the second part out loud, but the combination of all those factors makes the Cook Islands a very hard place for a plaintiff to break into a trust.
Yeah, that's an amazing explanation, and I think really gives the full picture of what a offshore trust can provide a client. I think that's really good. Jamie, do you want to talk about the investments a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. I mean, a lot of our listeners have heard us talk about that, and I don't want to take too much talking time away from you because they don't hear from you too often. But in general, we can do all the investments that you could also do in the US. Our firm specifically, WHEP, focuses on liquid investments. So our focus is mostly on international stocks, international corporate bonds, precious metals, and foreign currencies. If a client wishes, we also have options to hold cryptocurrencies, move cryptocurrencies into the account or buy them in the account. But that's not typically something that we would put into a portfolio on like a standard basis. But if they ask for it, then we can do that. I think why people work with us is mostly for this international aspect that they might be less likely to get in the US. So we focus on that to make sure that we are able to offer a counterweight to what they already hold in the US. But there's no like regulatory reason for us to not invest in the US. So if someone still wants to be exposed to the US market, they can also do that with a Swiss bank account.
Yeah, I think that's always an important piece is we are specialists outside of the US market and US dollar, but our investment universe is almost endless outside of the countries where you're not allowed to invest.
And this is a very important point to hammer in, that the trust structure doesn't limit your access to investments whatsoever. And in some cases, it will actually open you to investments that you can't make as a U.S. individual.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
that's a good point. So Blake, I would also be curious, for the listeners thinking, okay, this sounds very complex, but very interesting. What are some of the mistakes I want to avoid when setting up an offshore trust?
So the first mistake is simply waiting too long. The longer you have the asset protection in place, the better your protection is going to be, the better your settlement leverage. Waiting until the last minute is going to be very costly. It's going to cost more to get the structure set up. It's going to limit your options in terms of trust companies and banks, and it's going to greatly weaken your settlement leverage. On top of that is working with the right professional. The asset protection landscape is a quickly changing area between the different laws in various countries, the different requirements in your home country, the tax reporting requirements. It is something that is fairly easy to do wrong, but getting it right is very important. That's why you want to make sure that you work with a firm that focuses on asset protection and a firm has the right team internally and externally. A big part of the reason clients choose to work with my firm, not only because of our results, we've never once lost a penny for a client, but because of our access to a global network. I am here in Switzerland today. I was just in Hong Kong a few days ago. I was in the Cook Islands earlier this year. I'll be in Nevis in a few weeks. I'm out there constantly, myself and my team who I brought with me to Switzerland, meeting with professionals in the industry, because it allows us to stay abreast of knowledge and change and to negotiate better deals and learn more so that we can pass that knowledge and value on to our clients.
That's very good, Jamie.
Yeah, this is something that is very important to us as well, because we are in a field where you need such specialized knowledge. You cannot be an expert on everything. So that's always what we always advocate for, is people in the broader industry, they need to collaborate, they need to have partnerships so that we can help each other's clients offer and bring the knowledge to the table that we have that you might not have, and vice versa. So I fully agree. I think it's so important to build relationships, not just with clients, but also with partners that can offer complementary services to what we might do or what you might do.
Yes, asset protection is very much a team sport.
Yeah, and a question that I could imagine comes up quite often with offshore trusts that maybe we could address here is, often what we see in domestic trusts is the settlor is the beneficiary and also the trustee. And would a client be able to do that with an offshore trust?
No. Well, they should not, is the answer. There's a lot of different ways that the trust structure is manipulated and the integrity of it is compromised. That is not a style of planning that I recommend. I come from being trained by Barry Engel, the attorney who wrote the legislation back in the 1980s. And my philosophy, whether we're doing asset protection or any other portion of our life, is if you're going to do something, do it the right way. Have an independent trustee who is located in the Cook Islands or another protective jurisdiction. This doesn't mean that you lose control. You can still tell the trustee when you want a distribution. You can still request a distribution anytime you want. You can still choose how the money's invested. If for whatever reason the trustee is not behaving exactly as you would like them to, you can change who the trustee is. So the best structures, the client is the grantor, the one who creates the trust. Then you have the trustee, who's an independent trust company in the Cook Islands. And then you have the beneficiary, who's typically the client. Now, when the client passes away, their spouse or children would be the successor beneficiary. That's going to be the structure that gives you the best protection, the utmost peace of mind.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think one of the most common misconceptions that comes out about these trusts is how they set up and their flexibility, and where the structuring is very, I wouldn't say rigid, but strong. The flexibility, as we mentioned earlier, you can use a myriad of international tools, and the flexibility of an offshore trust is really quite diverse. And that's one thing I love about, for the right client, an offshore trust can really do wonders for their estate planning, their asset protection. And I guess that would be my question to you is, how do you approach individuals when building these trusts?
Um,
In terms of like there's no one size fit all, but how do you determine, okay, what is going to be the right setup? Is my protector, is he going to be in the US, or is my protector of the trust going to be in Belize, or the trustee? How do you kind of approach those situations?
Okay, so let's take a step back just to educate the listener. So there's typically three parties to the trust. There's the grantor, the one who creates the trust. There's the trustee, the one who manages the trust, determines when distributions are made, and then the beneficiary, the one who has the right to receive distributions. There's also a fourth party that we always include in an offshore trust, and that is the trust protector. The trust protector has a very limited role, which pretty much boils down to simply the ability to fire and replace the trustee. The protector would take these actions in one of two situations. Either we are unhappy with the trust company or the trustee comes under attack. So in the unlikely event that we have a plaintiff that goes to the Cook Islands and attempts to litigate there, and it looks like the plaintiff might actually be successful, we have the power to remove the trustee in the Cook Islands and appoint a trustee in Nevis or Belize or Seychelles or somewhere else in the world, and then the plaintiff has to start their case over entirely. Simply having the power to do that is enough to deter people from trying to litigate in the Cook Islands. If they actually go to that step, then we can move it, and we can do it without the trustee even knowing. I mean, the plaintiff is not going to even know where the trustee is, or they won't know until the tax filings come out the next year, giving our clients some time to negotiate and settle. The stronger the structure we have in place, the more likely it is that the plaintiff is either going to, and we've seen this before, completely drop their case or at least take our client's settlement offer.
One aspect of, Swiss banking is privacy. I mean, the world is more transparent, or trying to be more transparent than ever, whether that's the case or not. But what's kind of the privacy aspects, if any, of an offshore trust from your view?
The Cook Islands are extremely tight-lipped. You're not going to find a more private structure, more private legal structure than a Cook Islands trust. Now, there is a lot of confusion out there about hiding assets and what can be discovered. There are some promoters who are saying, oh, you can hide your assets, no one's going to find out about them. That's not true. A court could always order a defendant to disclose their assets. But here's the important part. Disclosure does not compromise protection. It can be hidden in plain sight. You can go into court and say, I have a Cook Islands trust, and there's $10 million of assets inside this Cook Islands trust. But that doesn't mean I have the ability to hand it over. So privacy, it is a benefit, but it's really not the main reason that individuals should be looking to set up a Cook Islands trust, because again, court can find out about it. The reason clients work with our firm overwhelmingly is because of the protection from lawsuits and divorce. Now, there's other benefits of setting up a Cook Islands trust. You can avoid forced heirship laws. It stays out of probate. It allows you to not need to get approval from your spouse to avoid the elective share, but the privacy aspect, in my opinion, is something that's a little bit oversold.
Yeah, that's very good to hear. And I think from the other side is, there's always reporting requirements if you're an American, especially in terms of your global tax requirements. While we're not tax professionals, like, it is very clear that you have to report your worldwide income. And if you are a beneficiary of these trusts, from my understanding, that also comes into play as well.
And let's flush out that point for a moment. You do have to report that you have an offshore trust, and if you have more than $10,000 total in offshore accounts, you do need to complete an FBAR on an annual basis. Now, we give our clients a detailed memorandum on how to complete those reporting requirements. We can also make a referral to a CPA who can help our clients complete those reporting requirements. However, the trust itself is a tax-neutral vehicle. It doesn't cause clients to pay anything more in taxes. It doesn't reduce taxes. It simply needs to be disclosed.
Yeah, I think the last time you were on our podcast, you said if we were able to avoid taxes, we'd be flying on private jets. And I thought that was a great line.
Or sometimes the line is, I wouldn't be living in Miami, I would own Miami. Or I even made a TikTok a little while back where I was saying, yes, set up an offshore trust and you can avoid all taxes. Just joking. And I got a little bit of a heart attack from a few people in the industry with that.
Yeah, of course.
I should have saved that one next year for April Fools.
So maybe you can elaborate a little more about like how the process works. So if someone's interested, they think they might want an offshore asset protection trust, they give you a call. What does the process look like? Like how long does it take? What kind of information do you need? Just to give some like hands-on information on the administrative side of things.
So typically the process starts with people either call my firm or to fill out a contact form. Maybe they found us through an excellent Swiss podcast or through our social media following or through a speaking engagement or referral by another attorney. I teach a lot of continuing legal education. Once they contact our firm, they will very soon be contacted by a member of our firm to either schedule a call with one of our attorneys or sales representatives, or they will right away be called and we'll start the process right then. Usually well within 24 hours, sometimes within a few hours if it's normal working hours, which normal working hours don't exist in this industry. During that consultation, we will evaluate whether the client would be a good fit for setting up an offshore trust. And I would say probably about 2/3 of people who contact our firm, either we don't find them the right fit or we send them somewhere else for some other type of recommendation. But for the 1 in 3 people who contact our firm, who they have a net worth of somewhere between usually over $1 to $2 million, that we do work with some clients quite a few clients whose net worth is under $1 million. And we do have a handful of clients whose net worth is significantly over $10 million. Most actually fall somewhere between about $2 and $20 million in assets. There's a big misconception that asset protection is only for the super wealthy, but that's very far from true. An individual who's worth $50 or $100 million can pay off a $5 million judgment. It's not going to have any real effect on their standard of living or quality of life. But if you're worth $2.5 million and you get hit with a $5 million judgment, that could be devastating. So we help to evaluate to make sure it's the right client, make sure it's the right timing. We're not going to work with somebody who's looking to do tax evasion. If somebody's already had some criminal matters that they're facing related to a financial crime, we're not going to be able to work with them. If it's something small that's not related to money or fraud, we can probably still work with them and get them on board. So we'll have that initial call. We'll evaluate whether we recommend they move forward with us. After that call, we will send them all the information they need to move forward, including how to submit payment for our fee. We'll include our engagement letter and some general information about the trust so they can educate themselves and learn about our process. We then require some money. Once they hire us, then we send them a welcome package with everything they need to get started. So they could contact us at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. We could have the phone call with them. Generally, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for a phone call, though we're happy to stay on longer. Sometimes it's taken even less than 5 minutes. Contact us at 9 a.m. on Monday. By 10 a.m., we've already sent them everything they need to get started. If they are motivated, they can submit payment and sign the engagement agreement right then. And then by 10:30, we'll send them our welcome package. That package will include a list of questions where basically we need to verify that they're not a drug dealer or a terrorist and that they haven't made their money through illegal means. Once that is done, we take all of that information, we review it, we put a nice little bow on it, and then we send it over to our friends in the Cook Islands. The trust company will then review it. We usually ask for about 2 weeks for the trust company to do their review, provided that the information they sent us is accurate, that there's nothing that comes up in their background, that they don't have any large presence that's going to cause any bad media for the trust company. The trust company will go ahead and register the trust. Once that's done, that's when your team comes into play. We'll put them in touch with an investment advisor who can help them open an offshore bank account. And our law firm will also work with them through the process of funding other assets into the trust, whether that's a business or real estate. That process, we'd like to budget another 30 days to get everything transferred in. Once all of that is done, then the clients have the peace of mind that if they get sued, their assets are protected. We then serve as an ongoing advisor going forward. So we don't just create the trust and leave the clients out to dry. That's actually the last thing we want to do, because what we are doing for our clients, we want to make sure that it actually works when the time comes. They basically get a warranty with our firm as we serve as an ongoing advisor going forward. Everything my firm does is on a flat fee basis. Clients know exactly what they're getting into when they work with us. They're welcome to call us. They're welcome to email us anytime. We don't want clients out there guessing what they're supposed to do, because that's when things go wrong. But as long as they have the proper guidance from us, we're able to make sure that they get the results that they want.
Yeah, that's very good. I think that's a really thorough explanation of what you guys do and where we come in as well when clients are looking to go offshore with their, investable wealth, I would say. And I think the whole process of even going through setting up the account to what we have to do is, depending on the bank, depending on the situation, where we're going to have to go, the documents that we need, that already has to be a registered trust. We have to identify, we have to get the tax information, or at least reporting information, to then take it to the bank and say, okay, this is the client, this is the information. And then it's going to take us, we actually just recorded a video about what kind of structures can hold an offshore trust. It's going to take, roughly between 5 to 6 weeks to get the account open, just for the banks to go through their compliance review. So when clients are listening about this whole process, it does take a little bit of time. And I think understanding that, but as you said, the longer you wait, you feel more pressure at the end. If you're already making a smart decision in the long run, okay, it's going to take some time. So I'm going to have to walk through these steps, and it's going to go quicker than you could imagine. At the same time, if you're pushed up against a wall, it's going to feel like it's taking endless amount of time because you're stressed about whatever's happening in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a few weeks of administrative paperwork for a lifetime of peace of mind, I think, is an investment well worth anyone's time.
And once that first month is done, once that first 5 to 6 weeks and everything is set up, it's a very low maintenance structure. It takes a little bit of time to get it all set up initially, but after that, you can kind of forget about it.
Yeah, that's great. I think we've covered a lot and almost everything. I would want to finish on busting some of the myths that surround offshore asset protection, offshore trusts. So maybe you could give kind of, I'll give some, how do I say, some keywords, and I'll just get your quick fire response, 1, 2, 3
Trigger words. Okay.
Yeah. So just a kind of a quick, so offshore equals shady.
Offshore equals shady. Is it ethical to even, so we know it's legal. We're all licensed professionals here. This business has been around for 40 plus years, but is it ethical to set up an offshore trust? I absolutely do not prescribe to this philosophy that there's anything honorable about being weak, about being unprotected, about leaving your family vulnerable. If you start a business in the United States, the first thing someone's going to say to you is register an LLC. Why? To protect yourself from lawsuits. If you start to accumulate wealth, you buy a home, someone's going to say, well, set up a trust to protect your children. If you get more money than that, people are going to say, well, you know what? You should look at setting up a domestic asset protection trust. Nobody thinks any of that is unethical or shady. But the moment you say, well, I'm going to set up a trust outside the United States because I actually want a darn plan that's going to hold up, people will start saying, whoa, what is this? What is this? The reality is, and this doesn't apply to the listeners of the podcast, a lot of Americans are very narrow-minded. Most have never left America. Those who have not gone beyond, most of them have not gone beyond Canada or Mexico. But that's changing as flight prices come down, as social media lets us see other parts of the world, as remote work is becoming more common. It's easier to live and spend time abroad. More and more Americans, especially those who are going to see the most success in the decades and years to come, are looking towards global solutions to the problems. So no, there's nothing shady about setting up an offshore trust.
Yeah, that's good. We also get that one too with Swiss bank accounts. And it's like, look, man, this has been around for ages, and everything is clearly legal and reported if you are with the right professionals.
Now, is filing a lawsuit shady, especially if you don't have a legitimate claim to stand on?
Sure.
And instead, what you're just trying to do is force the defendant who's busy running their life and managing their business into a settlement. And that goes on frequently, and legal extortion is prevalent in the United States. That I consider shady, and that is what we are the remedy to.
Yeah, that's great. The next one is, I'll lose control of my assets.
Another common misconception. This is an irrevocable trust. It sounds scary. I can't undo this. I can get out of a lot of contracts, but I can't get out of an irrevocable trust. Irrevocable doesn't mean anything other than that a court can't order you to revoke it. The trusts we set up, they were very flexible. If you were losing your money, nobody would be setting these up. You still have the ability to request the trustee take an action with your funds, and if they don't comply, you can find a new trustee who will. If you no longer want your trust, you simply request a complete distribution of your funds. The trustee will then send you all of your money, and you no longer have the trust. You're not going to lose control. Another very common misconception.
Great.
Irrevocable does not mean inflexible.
Perfect. The next one is, I can set it up after I'm sued.
So this is something that can be done, but it's not going to get you where you want to be. If you wait until a lawsuit begins, you're going to be severely limited in not only who you work with, it's going to cost you more, it's going to take longer, it's going to very much limit the amount of protection. We do have to inform the trustee and the banks of any pending litigation. They would require a carve out so that that creditor can be paid. So if the lawsuit has begun, it's still better to do an analysis. There may be some damage mitigation that can be done, but it doesn't mean that you can't set it up once a lawsuit has started. You're simply going to be protecting from future litigation. So what will happen is a doctor will get sued. Well, what is better is when your friend, the other doctor, gets sued and you realize, oh, wow, I need a trust now. But sometimes doctors get sued, or whatever type of professional gets sued, and then they realize, okay, I need this trust for future purposes. You don't have to wait until the pending litigation is done to go ahead and set up your trust. But if you wait until the lawsuit begins for the pending case, your settlement leverage has been extremely diluted.
Very good. It will help me avoid the IRS.
I wish. No, it doesn't help you to avoid the IRS. And as we mentioned, you do have to report it to the IRS. However, it does not increase your chance of an audit. Completing your tax reporting requirements is seen as an act of compliance, and the IRS in no way penalizes you for setting up an offshore trust.
Final one. It's only for billionaires.
It's only for billionaires. Well, if you are a billionaire, you can go around and hire the best defense counsel. You can pay off big judgments. You can flee the country. You can do all kinds of things that I shouldn't even say on a podcast. But if you're more of a upper middle class individual, lawsuits are a serious issue with growing a business. And not only do they cost you in terms of financially defending it, judgments can be terrible, they cause harm to reputation. And having assets that make you uncollectible reduces the chance that you are going to be sued, and they're a big time waster. So you can avoid the stress, the mental pain, the harm that comes into your family life and the distraction from your business by having an offshore trust. The majority of lawsuits that are filed against individuals who have less than $2 million in assets. So it's definitely not something that is only for the super wealthy. I think that's a rumor that is pushed by attorneys who never take the time and effort to develop the expertise to understand how to set up an offshore trust.
Perfect. Blake, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Jamie?
Thanks from my side as well. We really enjoy having you on, and we hope we get to repeat this in a few years from now.
Jamie, Jess, thank you both, and keep this up. I think that the professionals who are willing to go on camera, stand by what they say, are the professionals that you can and should trust the most. So thank you so much for having me, and it's been great working with you over the past few years, and here's to doing some more business together.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks again for joining us on this episode of the Swiss Money Secrets podcast. If you would like to learn more about WHVP and what we do, check us out on our website at whvp.ch. Or you can check us out on any of our social media handles on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram by simply searching WHVP. Have a great rest of your day.